What up, is Marks Dynasty Fun? We have the DeAndre Swift still free signed jersey. All you have to do is be a subscriber for a chance to win. See, it's signed. So we're going to be doing some reaction to Dynasty rankings. The Dynasty rankings that I'm going to be going after is Fantasy Pros. I love that website for mock drafting and redraft stuff. I think their content is actually pretty well through there. Some of my favorite redraft tools and some of my favorite mock draft tools along with Sleeper. And so we're going to go through their rookie rankings and I'm going to compare them to my rookie rankings because there are some rankings on here and this thing says it was updated yesterday. They got some explaining to do. That's all I have to say. Number one, right off the bat, is Kenneth Walker, which I get. I get the Kenneth Walker argument. Kenneth Walker's my number 3. He's 5'10", 210 pounds. He's athletic. He has lateral agility. He has good contact balance. I think some of his issues are pass blocking. We only saw really basically a year of Kenneth Walker. He had over 1,600 yards, 18 touchdowns on the ground. So really, it's his passing, his three-down ability. Does he have that three-down ability? I think Kenneth Walker is a very fine running back. He is my number 2 running back when it comes to Dynasty rankings. And if you have him number 1, that's not going to be where we're going to have this huge argument. There's going to be some arguments that I'm going to have with him very, very soon, though. And it's starting right now. And number 2 is their Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams was not my number 1 wide receiver pre-ACL injury, and he's not my number 1 wide receiver post-ACL injury because that would make literally 0 sense, and that'd contradict everything I said. Jameson Williams is their wide receiver 1 right now, and it just doesn't make sense. I don't understand it. You're going to get a player that's probably not going to play for the majority of the 2022 season, and even if he does, I still see him behind the talents of Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, which we're going to have a big argument with Garrett Wilson here when it comes to Fantasy Pros. And honestly, I had him behind Drake London as well. I had him as my wide receiver 4 in this class. And right now, he's right into that 7 range. So I do not understand why Jameson Williams is number 2. We'll see where he gets put, but I am putting him at least behind London, Burks, and behind Garrett Wilson. Those 3 for sure. And there's some arguments to have a couple other wide receivers into that area, whether it's Chris Olave or David Bell. There's players to have argument there around that area. So number 3 they have is Isaiah Spiller. And Isaiah Spiller is, if you gave me, the last 3 running backs of last year, we talked about Najee, Javonte, and Travis Etienne. I said they were kind of an interior-ish. I thought Najee was I thought he was the one, the number 1, but then you had Javonte and Travis Etienne, which if I had maybe 10 leagues, I think you hear this kind of saying, if you had 10 leagues, maybe I'd pick Javonte 7 or 8 out of those times, and Travis Etienne 2 or 3, and then the injury happened, and it became Javonte pretty much all the time. What I see out of Isaiah Spiller is he's 6'1", 225 pounds, which is awesome, but I don't take him ahead of Breece Hall. Not now. I think Breece Hall, spoiler, is my number 1. It's not their number 1. We're going to have to go a couple more players down. It's not even their next running back on the board, which, again, it doesn't make sense in my opinion. And this is why you have to, in my opinion, this is why I believe you have to listen to people who have done Dynasty and people that have won championships in Dynasty. There are some really good content out on YouTube. I won't name any specific names, but there are multiple channels that I definitely support and that I watch on a regular basis because they give much better rankings. My favorite one's Dynasty Nerds. They have really good film as well, but they are one of the ones that I listen to probably the most. This just doesn't make sense when you have Isaiah Spiller makes sense, but we're gonna get further down. Number 4 is not gonna make sense. These players, this is what happens: is some of these players get shot up the boards and they shouldn't, and all of a sudden you get these Ronald Jones and you get these players that shouldn't have been drafted that high, but they get pushed up. And so again, we'll have arguments here, but Isaiah Spiller is my number 4, and it's number 3 here, which if I had the next pick, if I had the pick 3, I would have picked Breece Hall. If I had picked 4, I'd still be picking Breece Hall. But number 4 for them is Kyren Williams. And he's out of Notre Dame, and Kyren Williams is a fine running back. He is probably into that middle teens right now for me. It depends on draft capital. He's the running back that probably could him and James Cook could be the running backs that shoot up the boards the most for me, depending on how they measure at the combines and how high their draft capital is. If they're rounds 1, 2, or 3, which basically if they're round 3 or up, that's kind of that cutoff mark that could shoot them up into the top 10, but not number 4. Kyren Williams over Breece Hall is ludicrous, like ridiculous. Like I'm mad that this thing says it was updated yesterday. I just want to go contact somebody at Fantasy Pros and be like, do you guys need some help? Because this is ridiculous. And this is out of, how many people? On consensus on 17 experts. So 17 people clearly do not watch film and they don't understand analytics or the combination of both, because that ranking right there just proves to me these were probably the same rankings that had just players above Javonte and above Travis Etienne. It's the same people that probably had Khalil Herbert way high or had the Ramondre Stevenson way high. Like, I understand those, that they're players that might be good for a year or two in the NFL, but they're not 3, 4, 5-year players. So we'll get to the next one. Treylon Burks, who is my number 2 and my number 1 wide receiver. You're talking about 6'3", 232 pounds. We talked about his high dominator, his high target share, just ridiculous, over 90 percentiles in both. He's physical, he's fast. He is the player that has the highest ceiling in this entire draft. If you just told me one of these players finished at number 1 in their overall position, I would tell you it's Treylon Burks. Even over Breece Hall, Treylon Burks has the chance of being a wide receiver 1 overall. He does have more bust potential than like a Garrett Wilson, who is a more savvy of a route runner and better at separation and setting up his defender. But Treylon Burks is a physical mismatch, and that's why I like him. I honestly, sometimes you go for the play that has that more bust potential, but man, if he hits, you're talking about potentially a top 5 overall player. You're talking about an A.J. Brown. I mean, this is what you're talking about. A wide receiver that has 1,000 yards in a couple of first years and ends up being this cornerstone of your team. Number 6, Chris Olave, who is we're going to go through all the way to 12, and then we'll go to the top 10 because they still have more issues. Maybe we won't even get that far because this is honestly so frustrating, because people probably follow this advice religiously and go, oh man, I got to take Chris Olave here. And it's like, no, I am easily taking Garrett Wilson. Chris Olave, again, right around that 10 mark for me. Chris Olave is a fine wide receiver. But even you can just watch the tape. Watch the tape. Look at even some of the analytics there, but watch the tape and you can see that the number 1 wide receiver on that team is Garrett Wilson, which frustrates me. I'll just spoiler, Garrett Wilson's 13th. He's number 5. He's 6 feet tall, 188 pounds. I'm going to talk more about Garrett Wilson because I like him. Route running, catch point, everything. He does have some focus drops. He does have some blocking issues. Again, those things, do they matter in the scheme of fantasy? Not one bit. I don't care about I care that he's on the field. Focus drops is frustrating, but he is Terry McLaurin-esque. We're talking about route running and separation, those two things. You're talking about the Terry McLaurins, the Deontay Johnsons. Maybe not a top 10 wide receiver, but a solid 11 to 20 consistently year in, year out. Probably a high safety player, like low bust rate. Even think Keenan Allen-esque. Like, you're talking about these route runner separation players. They are excellent at producing in fantasy and getting open, and that's what you honestly need when it comes to a wide receiver. Number 7 is finally Breece Hall for them. 6'1", 215 pounds. He's been my number 1 for the last 18 months. And if I had the number 1 overall pick, I can't see that changing at this point. Unless something crazy happens with draft landing spot. I was trying to think of the word landing spot. I think that would be the biggest situational change, where all of a sudden you get a Kenneth Walker to Miami, which is a lovely spot, versus, and let's just say Breece Hall goes to, I'm trying to think of a crappy team he goes to the Jets. And Jets is even a decent situation, but maybe he goes to Atlanta, or he goes to, trying to think of another place right off the top of my head that would be a situational kind of nightmare. There's others out there, but if Breece Hall goes into that situation where he has a horrible situation, and then you have Kenneth Walker, let's say, has a really high situation, I could see that being a switch. Kenneth Walker being 3 and Breece Hall being 1, I could see him getting knocked down a peg or 2, but not much. Not 7. That's ridiculous. I'm just going to go through their 8, 9. 8's Jalen Werdemeyer, and then tight end, and then 9 is George Pickens. I don't even want to talk. They have Kenny Pickett, and then they finally have Garrett Wilson down the road. Then they have John Michie, and then they finally have Drake London at like 15. Oh, all right. We're gonna go with some players that I like. Number 6 is Drake London for me. He's 6'5", 210. Contested catch. He is potentially the best USC wide receiver over the last couple of years. Think of Ross St. Brown, Michael Pittman's been there. Drake London is arguably better than both of those players. Different wide receiver, of course, being 6'5", 210 pounds, but think he has the ceiling of Mike Evans. Yeah, there's always bust potential when you have a 6'5", 210-pound receiver that does struggle against the press. But 88 catches, 1,084 yards, 7 touchdowns. Again, potentially the best wide receiver this class until he got hurt, at least production-wise. And production is matters. Number 7, we're going to talk about Jameson Williams. He's the one that tore his ACL. He is fast, smooth, sub probably 4'3", 6'2", 189. But the issue of why he's being kind of into this mark is because he probably won't play for much of 2022 season, so I don't like that. But you look at what he produced at Alabama, it was incredible. So, and then we'll just go with 8 is David Bell. He's Mr. Bateman of last year. He's basically good at everything, not elite at anything, and draft capital will be key, but I could see him as an early second-round pick. I could see him in a good situation, being a good overall player, and that's why I have him there. And then George Pickens, he's number 10, but he's recovered from ACL injury, but it was a while ago. He actually was back in the national championship game. 6'3", wiry frame, and you can see his humongous upside. And he has great catch away. He has a great, basically, body awareness and catching away from his body. And I have a couple other wide receivers: Wando Robinson, Jahan Dotson, kind of those more of a scat wide receiver, slot wide receiver. Really depends on what situation they go to. I could even see him like a Kyron Williams move above them. I could see a Chris Olave. Chris Olave's been moving up in my boards. He's right below these guys, and I could see at the end of me watching, I continue to keep going through more analytics, more film, because I want to make sure that I'm keeping updated. I want to keep making sure I'm producing the best content out there, and I'd like to be right. I'm competitive. I like to be right in everything if possible, and so I want to be right in this too. I want to be able to produce good players, and eventually we'll get into some of these deep sleepers as well. I definitely would say that deep sleepers last year were a success with, I can't think of, why am I blanking on the Washington running back's name? Why can I not think of his name? He's out of Buffalo. Jarrett Patterson. Why? I totally went. And so we were also one of the big founding factors of Elijah Mitchell, that we thought that he was going to be a really good producer. And I was a hater on Trey Sermon, which ultimately probably lost me a couple subscribers about 7 months ago. I think I lost some subscribers on the Trey Sermon hate, but that's okay. And I also had a little bit. When I said Jamar Chase hate, I said that he was close into tier with Devontae Smith, and I said that Devontae Smith was maybe more talented, and that Jamar Chase had the better situation, which pushed him slightly ahead, which I was wrong about that. So you can't be right about everything, because Jamar Chase is clearly the better fantasy wide receiver, and there's a big gap between those two now. So, again, that's what we have for rookies. We got to go through some more rookies. I need to go through some more different websites and see what in the world's going on, because they are clearly not seeing what I'm seeing, or I'm not seeing what they're seeing. More probably that. I'm like, I don't understand why Garrett Wilson's 13th and Drake London's 15th. I don't understand that. Like, that angers me that it's even still like this. It shouldn't have been like this even a month ago or 2 months ago or 5 months ago. Like, this should have been changed. So, did they both tear their ACLs in the offseason I didn't know about? I got to check the Twitter sphere and check. All right. So, again, this is Marcus Dynasty Fun. Peace out. Take care.